Good evening to our participants on YouTube. I apologize for the delay. Could you please confirm via the web chat if I am audible? All right. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's Academy session. This evening, we have Mr. Chetan Korada, who will be delivering a session on mastering the track based on his racing experiences through the Formula Bharat Academy series platform. Chetan will also be providing advice on how Formula student drivers can overcome adversities on the track, and we will also be sharing tips and tricks from his past experiences. Mr. Chetan is India's first and only differently abled driver who has won a race without any modifications performed on his vehicle. Hailing from Andhra Pradesh, Chetan was born with a deformity at birth, which required him to undergo a bilateral amputation. Despite this, Chetan has seen himself evolving into a successful international racing champion since 2007. Chetan began his career in racing in 2007 at the JK Tyre National Racing Championship. He then went on to participate at the MMLC Summer Cup and at the JK Tyre Junior Cup in 2008, where he secured a third place finish in each. In 2009, he made 5 wins and secured second place out of 6 races at the MMMC Summer Cup Championship. In the following years, he continued to participate at the JK Tyre Junior Cup, the JK Tyre FMSCI National Racing Championship, the JK Tyre Rotax Max National Racing Championship, the MRF FMSCI National Racing Championship, the FIFO SEA, and the Euro JK National Racing Championship. Chetan was the only driver from India to participate in the international series of the MRF International Challenge 2018 to 2019 and 2019 to 2020 championships. So please welcome Mr. Chetan Korada today at our Academy series. Chetan, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for the warm welcome, and good evening to each one of you who are tuned today to watch me speak about whatever I have experienced in the last 15 years of motorsports. So I hope whatever I'm going to be sharing is going to be useful and helpful for your career. So to briefly talk about my...
Hi, Chetan, I think you accidentally muted yourself. Let me see. Are you able to see the notification? Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Okay, so I've been in the sport for last 15 years. So I'm just not been today. I am a team owner also. I own a company called Quest Motorsports. So we are mostly trained. We focus on training of drivers as well as engineers, mostly drivers who want to compete in different national level series. So we have a big fleet of vehicles and girls and boys who are getting trained to become champions one day. While there are a lot of teams out there who are ready to be training drivers to compete in different national series, we also focus on giving education and hands-on experience to various engineers to actually help them go forward in motorsports and take it up as a career. So while that is on the current, I would say, things I've been doing, I started off my career as the only differently able driver in India. So I race on prosthetic legs. I was born without legs. So that makes me the only para athlete in Indian motorsports. I was also recently been given a grant by the FIA Disability and Accessibility Commission. So I've been using that wisely in my racing, and thanks to all the support from the FIA as well as FMSCI, our governing body for Indian motorsports. So with all the support, I'm able to do this, and I've been racing on non-modified race cars. So I simply feel what the other drivers feel, the same level of acceleration and also braking pressures. While driving has always been a passion, I had major interest towards the technical aspects of a car. Since I've been focusing a lot on car racing, and most of my interest has been towards the Formula cars, the single seaters. So I gave in a lot of time to understand the car over the many years. So today, I think I have the opportunity to actually share my experiences and ideas about Formula racing or a race car itself.
Hi, Chetan. Everything okay?
Yes, Kathy. I was just hoping that we can start off with some questions so I can actually relate and have more content to it.
Oh, okay. All right. Just a second. Participants, if you have any questions, please go ahead. So, Chetan, we have a question on YouTube Live. One of the questions is going into this journey, when you first started off, it must have been very difficult. How did you navigate that as a young person at that time?
Yes, like any other kid out there, I think by the time I could learn how to walk, my family understood that I like cars. So I used to be fiddling around and playing around with toy cars, and that's how the interest actually started growing. And I actually had done a lot of other things apart from racing until I got into professional racing. I was also a DJ, I was an audio engineer. I was doing everything possible to actually find some money to go and do some go-karting. So it was all about putting myself in a go-kart rather closer to my dream. So I worked everything towards my dream and not against my dream. So I felt karting was the only, I would say, the closest resource towards my sport, the dream I'm living today. So I used to spend a lot of time on karts. I really never knew that there was a circuit in Chennai, the place I lived in all my life. So we have a circuit in Sri Perumbudur, which I call my second home today. But back then, even when I was in school, I never knew that there was a racetrack in Sholavaram or even the Sri Perumbudur circuit or even the Curry Motor Speedway, which most of the students who are part of the student formula have been part of. So none of these resources were known to me. But it so happens then I got in touch with one of my friends in school whose father was a racing driver, and that's when I didn't want to hold myself back. I took a step forward because it's just that moment of courage which changed my entire life. So I went forward and asked him if he could actually take me to the racing circuit just once. I wanted to see how racing is done. I wanted to see with my own eyes that yes, it is true that racing in India exists. But until then, people never believed that there was even Naren Karthikeyan would be reaching Formula One at one point of time. All people knew were just Michael Schumacher, and then they come to know Ayrton Senna and a lot of other legends later on, as racing just got familiar into the picture. But now I must admit that motorsports has been happening in India from 1970s very actively, from Sholavaram to all the rallies in the north. And then we came down to the Sri Perumbudur racetrack, which was a grade 2 circuit. And we have a grade 3 circuit, which is opened up in the Curry Motor Speedway, which has been recently modified and inaugurated. We have another grade 2 circuit coming in India, while a grade 1 Formula 1 Buddha International Circuit is there today. So there's so many circuits out there today, but back then I never had somebody to tell me this. So I'll say it's important to do your own homeworks, which I did. I got hold of friends who could take me closer to the circuit. When I went there, I first happened to rent out a car during a track day. So anyone's allowed to come and rent out a race car during a track day, and happens till date on Sundays. Generally, if you get in touch with the circuits, they let you know when is a track day. You could come have a few laps around the circuit. And it was my decision after that. I chose to stick on and just keep driving. And that's happening today.
That's amazing. We do have a few more questions. Pavilan, since you've joined on to Zoom, you did have a question on YouTube. You had mentioned, you had asked, how was your first day of the race? Your first race. Yeah, your first day, your first race.
It wasn't easy because it's not every day you get to see someone on two artificial leg driving a car. So that's when I would say the medical center at the circuit weren't happy to see me out there, because they could see potential danger walking into the hospital. You know, they
I can
thought I could be
imagine.
they thought I could be potential danger to other drivers, which they were supposed to be thinking the other way. So I was proud enough that yes, I could be danger to someone. You know, that actually sounds good on day one itself. But nevertheless, coming to the serious side of it, I battled it out. I told them that I could probably just give it a. You should give it a shot. You never know. I could I could complete races even. So there was a lot of support from other team owners and managers who were there at the circuit, and they actually convinced them to let me race for the weekend under observation. And if I fare well, and I should be getting my circuit license, and that actually happened. So I actually gained some positions, not many, but quite a few on my first race, and I got my license. But I remember my first experience in a race car was during a testing. I never wanted to get out of the car once I got in, because I never found a car which had a seat that comfortable. It was just made of plastic. I'm sure in real life, if you're given a plastic chair in a car, you wouldn't be that happy. But since it was a race car, I didn't care which material it was made of. But the moment I sat inside the race car, I never wanted to get out of it. I just felt that's the most comfortable place to be sitting in. And it just stuck on. I felt that racing cockpits are my office, and that office I like to be sitting there and working the whole day. I remember that when the first time I was on the grid for the first race, so I told myself that finally my dream has come true, and I saw the 5 red lights coming on and off. And once the light was off, I no longer was an amateur or an aspirant, but I believed that I was on the track of becoming a professional. So I just focused on that direction.
That is amazing. This is really cool stuff that we get to hear from you. I mean, to get to see your perspective of being on the track. So, who is your inspiration in motorsport? This question was from Prasant.
Okay. So, my inspiration from motorsports, I would say, well, I didn't have anyone from my family who belonged to the motorsports background, because most of my friends, I'll say, who's been sticking around the racing circuit from the time they were kids, either belong to a motorsports background, or they had close friends who were there already in motorsports. So I had to find my way in through friends. So I really couldn't find anybody back then when I got into the sport that I could look up to in Indian motorsports at least. But of course, while I grew up as a little kid, Michael Schumacher was always my favorite. And then came in Ayrton Senna. I was closely following, and he was a legend. I'm always I've always been personally, I say, my racing idol has been Michael Schumacher. And today we have drivers who have passed his records. We have Hamilton, who's rather called a great one of the not one of the rather the greatest driver of times today. breaking all the records of having the highest poles and wins. But I'll say some of them just remain as idols, and I can't really specify whose favorite I am, who's my favorite, but because they keep changing. Every driver is different in different races. In different circuit, you get to choose different stars. So I would say that's something really interesting about racing. So I till date, I would say my biggest inspiration has been my mother. She's not a motorsports person, but she's the one who taught me how to drive a car and used to take me for karting, and who really motivated me to go further in the sport. So I think the inspiration can be anybody, from maybe somebody from home itself, but you can have idols everywhere you can follow and be somebody like them one day.
That's amazing. So our participants over here, before we take on more questions from YouTube, do you have any questions that you would like to ask? Please feel free to unmute your microphone. We'll wait for a few seconds if any of you would like to go ahead and ask questions. There was one question in the meanwhile on YouTube as well, which is how can Formula student participants, use this platform that we have to get into the motorsport arena as a career?
Well, thanks for the question. I was actually waiting for that at the end, but I'll be very happy to answer that now. Motorsports is not a very closed world either. You need to understand that motorsports is accessible. Back then I used to assume that, it's really tough to get into motorsports. You need to know somebody in motorsports to get into motorsports. No, that's not true. You just need to rather connect. I'll say you ask, you get it, literally. You just need to ask. So we believe that, the future is there in the students who are part of these programs. The Formula students I'm talking about, the kids who are aspiring to build something new and make something go quicker and faster is what we look out for. So there are a lot of opportunities waiting out there in circuit racing, in autocross, in rally, in bikes. There's so much of opportunities out there for mechanical engineers and automotive engineers. And many of them today, they have continued their studies with motorsports engineering also. So this is basically, I'll say, you're preparing for the right future, because you're just not going to be building walls there. You're just going to be building machines which are going to be getting quicker and quicker. And as a team owner, I like to explore different ways to go faster and faster, and I need engineers for that. And there are many team owners like me out there. So it's just about bringing in ideas and rather capitalizing on the opportunities you already have, presenting a much more talents out there when you meet us in person. So if you're studying, I'll say learn it all, gather more, and bring them to us, because there's a lot of team owners who are waiting there to give opportunities. And today we have programs happening out there, because in fact, Quest Motorsports are involved into technical training also. We basically teach the student just not on how to drive a car on a racing circuit, but also to set up a damper, to mounting an engine and a gearbox to a chassis, and the kind of brakes we use. We keep checking and do R&Ds on our brakes and dampers every single day. So there's so much of opportunities. I think you just need to come out there and just scream out, and I'm sure you'll find somebody's voice coming out there.
Thank you for that. Another question that we have is, what is your mindset when you, the day before or the night before you go for your race?
I don't sleep. I'm the most, it so happened on Mondays, it's after the race, or rather Sunday evening, I want to look like the guy who just drove a race and came back. I'll just throw everything aside, all my baggages aside, and I'll be like, I'm just a different person. Or don't speak about the guy who just drove. But let's say on a Friday, the day before the race, oh God, I really wouldn't waste my time talking to someone. My mind would just be going in circles, focusing on what I should be doing for the next day's race. I can't stay cool. I can't sleep. Sometimes they say, you know what, you got your mind like a temple or whatever. Sometimes it's so hard to do that as a racing driver. Maybe you get to really focus 10 to 15 minutes before the race. If you're lucky, if you're let alone, sometimes we listen to music. But talk about the previous day, oh God, we are very anxious about what's going to happen, because we're talking about hundreds or thousands of bolts, and we got various parts. You have a throttle body to worry about. You got a mass sensor. Now you got gauges which are not working, or you never know. You just change your new pads, and I hope the brake pads are working on right. They're bedded enough. Now there's so much of involved, so much things involved into a race car. So I think you have all the reasons to be tensed. So that's what goes into my mind before a race. I'm always tensed. But at the same time, I think the tension is required to take the job more seriously there.
Chetan, is there a specific car that you had the most fun while driving? Because you've participated in like a couple of series. So anything, or is this going to be, you don't want to say it out loud?
No, it's not couple of series, but literally I've driven all the single seaters possible in India.
Yeah.
From the Formula Marutis to the Formula Swift to the Formula 1300, Formula Hyundai, the Formula BMW version 1, the version 2, the Formula 1600s, the Formula FLGV 4, tested the Formula Roll-Ons, and driven the Formula 1600s, where I finished third in the overall championship. Formula 1300, the second in the championship. Then again, Formula Maruti, I was champion there. And karting, I was a champion there. Now, Formula 2000s was more or less a Formula 3 car. It's an FIA certified car, just without a halo, but it was made by Dallara Chassis, and it was quite a fast car. So I would say I had strong memories in the Formula Maruti, which was powered by the Maruti 800 engine. Well, at the same time, I had really favorite memories in the Formula 2000s also, where I raced in Bahrain and Dubai. So every car I had memories. I missed every single car I drove. So I focused a lot on single seaters. Saloon cars were part of my journey, but I really didn't give much of importance to it. I think the Formula cars were my favorite. So Formula Maruti and my Formula 2000, the first and the last one I drove.
So we have a question from from Karan. How does it feel when you race, and what does racing mean to you?
Racing is my livelihood. End of the day, I made race my life. Because I could have just been a nobody sitting on a wheelchair. With two prosthetic limbs, I think it's easy to be called a differently able person and get all the privileges and make noise that, hey, you know what, I'm the special one rolling on the wheels. That's something that the last thing I ever wanted. I never wanted to use clutches. I never wanted somebody to give me a shoulder to walk around. I wanted to be independent. I wanted an identity. And that's when I realized that I could make my disadvantages as my advantages. And that's when I chose, if I have to create an identity, it has to be in something big. I could just be sitting out there and playing some board games, but that's not going to make me somebody, I would say, remarkable or standing out there. So I chose motorsports, and motorsports happened to be, of course, my first love. I love motorsports. I love cars. I thought, I should make an identity out there. When people said, Chetan, you're crazy, you shouldn't do motorsports. It's dangerous. You just have hardly any legs down there. And what are you trying to do? I said, no, I want to use what I have and try to make the best of life. So I thought, I should give 100% of myself into motorsports. So I took it up seriously. So I decided that I shouldn't be a nobody and become somebody out there in motorsports. And today, I'm surprised to say that on my 16th year in motorsports, I'm the only para athlete out here, driving non-modified race cars with differently able people. I don't drive in different series, and driving them with abled people, I would say that's when I breathe 200%.
That's amazing. On that same note, what do you think? I mean, in your last 16 years in motorsports, do you see it being more of a what is the challenge most, the physical or the mental challenge when you are preparing and gearing up for races, and even during the season?
Mental preparation, I would say. is vital there, because you can always stay intact, stay fit. You can always get yourself fit in a matter of a month or two also, if you wish to, before a race. But at the same, I think during competition, what kind of mindset you carry just before the competition really matters. So it's very important for every motorsports person, just not the drivers, but also the engineers and the mechanics, to be having a strong mindset, a positive mindset to succeed. Because even one element of one mechanic doesn't really work, the entire race is gone. So it's important as a sportsman, an athlete, as well as a team crew member, to be mentally intact and positive all the time. And somebody who's self-motivated, I think, will make a huge difference in performance. So I focus on being self-motivated. That's what I teach all my boys and girls in the team, as well as my crew also. Tell them that, they have to motivate themselves, and they don't have to keep waiting for motivation from out there. So I think mental preparation is everything. Physical preparation is definitely, I'll say, is mandatory, because I I've prepared physically for quite a few seasons, but every time I got distracted with something or other, which came in my way, my entire race or the entire season is gone. And now, when you're talking about season on a race, we are talking about a lot of money also out there.
Right,
I
right.
think it's important to stay focused.
Is there a particular training regimen that you go for when you do when you say preparing physically for this season?
Yeah, a lot of cycling. I'd say cycling has been really helping me, because
Okay.
for at least my body conditions and the way I've been using my prosthetics from my childhood, I just need to give a lot of motion to my legs. So I do a lot of cycling and walking around. I don't do any heavy weight lifting, which is not really required for motorsports. We're not lifting cars here; we're just driving them. So I think, just building up your endurance and spending a lot of time on simulators, so that keep me focused on you know on probably a session. So it's just about, keeping your mind more focused. So simulators have been helping us quite a lot. And and do a lot of ground workout. Ground workouts are more than enough. We don't really use sophisticated machines to be sitting in a race car. So it's all about increasing your endurance levels, your agility, your resistance, and your flexibility. I would say reflexes also needs to be extremely good. So I think it's important to have your regular workout session for at least 2 to 3 hours a day, if you're at a level of Formula 1 to Formula 3. But otherwise, if you're racing in India, I think 1 to 1.5 hours of fitness every day should do. And mental conditioning, I think that doesn't need sessions. That's just part of life. You just got to do it every day.
Yeah, I'm sure Formula student participants can resonate to that as well. I mean, with the whole, being prepared mentally as well. Physically, it's definitely something that as a student, nobody ever thinks about going and getting exercise, because everyone's busy building the car and getting it ready for the competition. And drivers usually don't think that, but that's a really good point to keep yourself fit, because you have to be able to manage the endurance part of being in a vehicle. So we have another question here. How can drivers train themselves with limited resources before such competitions?
It's very simple. As I said, you don't really need sophisticated equipments to start training for a race. In fact, I usually prefer going off to my farm before a race, where it's just clean air, fresh air. It's the terrain is not even, so I'm actually rather um, climbing up a steep hill and coming down, and doing a lot of cycling and breathing exercises, strengthening your core, and staying on the floor, doing some push-ups, doing some squats, working on some planks. I think those kind of workouts are good enough to increase your body conditions. As I said, you're not going to be lifting cars or pushing them. You're just going to be driving them. So you just need to strengthening. You should be focusing on strengthening your core
Right.
and your endurance levels. That's all is required.
Right. For sure. And now driving a Formula car is all about being spontaneous. If a driver feels that the car is understeering or oversteering during the race itself, how can the driver overcome such an incident to, drive better?
Yeah, I can give an answer by starting off with one of the examples where I couldn't rather heel and toe. Many people don't understand heel and toe. Heel and toe is a blip, many people say, where you're on the brake, but you give a little bit of a quick throttle, either from your heel, you slap the throttle at the same time, just to give a more rev, into a corner. So basically carrying more RPM when you're slowing down the car at the same time. So I couldn't do that. When I spoke to my coach in 2009, his name is Akbar Ibrahim, who is also the president of the federation right now. So he only told me this: I can't give you an answer, but you need to find a way around. You need to find a different way to do it. You need to find a different way to do it. So when I actually understood what is a different way to do it, I understood that, what, I can carry actually more rev before I actually start putting the brakes. I just need to find a way around. So if they can come to an answer now, it's all about finding another way to do it. It's about adapting to a closer idea. Now, understeering and oversteering can be balanced by your steering inputs also. If you balance your steering inputs with the throttle inputs, now, in a recent race, my car was understeering in the entry of a corner. So the only way is to slow down the car enough to get the car turned in to come back on power on the right line. But that's only during a racing, I would say, a situation. But otherwise, if you have time, I would sit down and work on that understeering problem.
Right, right. That makes sense. On that same line, when you're running at a new track, because now that you are even attending international events, how many laps does it take before you find, the limits on your braking points?
Okay. So the braking points, you don't necessarily have to go straight to a 50 meters and start braking. So I would, every time I try a circuit, I go to all the straights. Firstly, I check the patch at the corners, the braking points, if it has a camber or not, if it's a very rough surface where I'm braking. Is it, if it's a corner which already has a lot of rubber, I can, which I'm saying I have traces of rubber already. It simply means that I can go really late on the brakes. It has grip over that point. A camber or an uphill can give me more braking efficiency than a downhill. So it's only during an outlap I usually will understand how is it feeling inside a car. But it is important to go for a track walk before you start driving. So you go around the circuit and get references of the track surface. When you understand the track surface, you can understand the braking which is required for that. A camber can let your car still be inside a circuit and you can still have a controlled braking. An uphill, you can late brake. But on a downhill, I think you need to slow down the cars easy and have a proper downforce for that matter. So the braking is always analyzed only during a track walk before
Right.
you start driving.
Right. I've never thought about it that way but I guess, yes, if you've been racing for quite some while, how, which areas to look at when you do your track walk too. Um, that's great. We have a question from Karan, and I think you've touched point on this before as well. How can I enter into the world of motorsports as a racing driver? In the beginning, you mentioned that, you can connect with various teams. How do you go about that process?
To make it easy now, you just type, racing academies in India, or you can also reach out to FMSCI. But now I've started my own academy also. So this is how we get in our inquiries. So we go posting about our drivers. Our drivers have been, in fact, motorsports has been a closed world. So it's been word of mouth marketing where people come and bring in their friends to come and race. But now, since there are different platforms, like Quest Motorsports itself, where we have packages for level 1 training, level 2, and level 3. So level 1 is where you come and experience circuit racing for the first time. So we put you on a saloon car. We teach you the fundamentals of racing, driving in a circuit. We teach you the flag rules, the disciplines to be maintained inside the car and outside the car, and certain track rules and some theory, which we generally cover upon on level 1 training. And we teach you the lines to be driving on. And the braking techniques are generally covered. So by the time you come to level 2, you're all good to be driving around the circuit. But it's level 2 is when you start understanding on late braking techniques and overtaking maneuvers and understanding the physics of a car on, for example, weight distributions and how the dampers react into every corners. And telemetry data study comes in between level 2 and level 3. So these are the kind of programs which are involved, and they are different ways of training. Methods are different in different schools, but this is how I take classes. We have simulators. First we put our drivers into simulators, so we understand how sensible are the drivers before we put them onto a real car, and we run them through all the disciplines involved into driving and off track, on track activities, as then put you into saloon cars and formula cars, and then we get you into racecrafts and the physics of a car. And we do have a program called KYC, which is called Know Your Car. So we strip open a race car and we build it back while you're there. So you understand what component works for what as a race car driver, because not all race car drivers are mechanical engineers.
Yes. It's true. Very cool abbreviation. Not cool, but it could be confusing because you're a business owner as well to use KYC at different times. But I guess that's on another note. We have a question here. What is the difference? Have you found any difference between driving here in India and internationally?
Well, I've driven with drivers internationally. I think one of the recent series in 2020 was the MRF Challenge.
Right.
Well, I was surprised to say that 90% of the grid were half my age.
Wow.
So, I mean, I was more passion driven, so age never came in my way.
Right.
I still got opportunities to drive, but the kids, like let's say from the Schumacher family, and we got a lot of Formula One generations who competed with me out there.
Sure.
Now they spend 300 days a year literally on a circuit driving around carts and cars. While in India, we really don't get that opportunities because, sometimes, you need to answer your mom and dad before stepping out the house. So it doesn't really, you get time to go to a circuit every single day and spend that kind of money.
Right.
So, so
Yes.
things are quite restricted in the country. I think, well, parents do understand that you want to go play football or cricket these days every day, but when it comes to circuit racing is when they flip and they want to hide their wallets the moment you open your mouth.
Right. I can imagine being an expensive sport to begin with. So there's a question for Pavilion, and I know we've got only a few minutes left with you. I have just 3 more questions left to ask.
Go ahead, please.
Pavilion says, what was the impact of simulation in your reflex and driving? I think he means on the simulator, perhaps.
Yes. It's a wonderful question because that's something which I've been educating a lot of people on. The simulators are the current and the future, because today Formula One drivers, even they spend a lot of time on simulators. Formula 2 drivers train on simulators, Formula 3 drivers also. Now, simulators basically help the engineers and the mechanics understand the driver's behavior, the mindsets, because there might be aggressive drivers, there might be conservative drivers, and some drivers, we call them doctors. So literally, when you say doctors, are the ones who understand which part of the car is behaving at which point while they're driving the car itself. So the drivers who can feel the car when they're driving, I need to feel the car, I need to feel the grunt when I'm driving. And there's some drivers who feel that, just by looking at a video, they don't need a lap on the car, they can just go out there and do it. But you get to analyze this all on a simulator. Now, as the fact remains that circuit racing is expensive, and trying to rent out a circuit is going to be way off the roof every day if you're going to do this every day, So booking a circuit once a week sometimes also is, I would say, you should be lucky, because you really can't book circuits every single day. Availabilities and the costs involved, and owning a car and the fuel and the mechanics. So there's so much of cost involved. But while I'm giving at least say 8 days to 10 days of practice to my students or drivers in my academy, I actually recommend simulator practices at home. It doesn't have to be one certain circuit, or it doesn't have to be few specific cars, but keep testing different vehicles on different tracks. I think that's possible on simulator. So now on a rainy day where you have boats going on the roads here, you can still go do a race in Belgium, sitting on a simulator at home.
Right.
So basically the Chennai floods or the Bangalore yellow warning is not going to help a race, get destroyed. You still race with someone. In fact, I got a chance to be racing with Romain Grosjean on a iRacing platform.
Wow.
So you actually get to meet a lot of international drivers on online racing platforms, which we call the esports. At the same time, you actually get practice on circuit racing. We call seat time. Seat time is very important for a driver to go forward. So when I went to Formula 2000, I saw most of the grid. They had immense seat time compared to me, 300 days a year on a circuit, while I'm talking about 30 days a year on a circuit. Now, how much of experience is that? So they were able to get on pace just like that, while it took me 3 days to get to the time they were.
Right.
So seat time really makes a big difference, and I think simulators can save you on that.
Yes, for sure. And now that technology has also become so advanced, and simulators go through so many updates in terms of software, it makes it even more realistic. Just even last year we had a virtual racing series, and although it was on a lower end of the simulator, since we didn't get to use the full thing, but eventually, hopefully, we hope participants will see the importance of having access to such a thing, especially for, as you mentioned, floods in Chennai, weather conditions that prevent you from going on track, and you lose that seat time, which is so important for driver training and driver practice on track. I think there's a question from Pavilan, but I'll give you a bit of context on it. So in a Formula student track, it's mostly based by limited by the cone setup. There's a lot of chicanes, a lot of corners. It doesn't really matter on the actual track itself, like we have it at Curry. So like maybe on the max on a straight, you could probably hit 60 kilometer per hour, or you might hit a 80 if depending on the length of the straight. So yeah, it's limited a lot by that. So what would help Formula student drivers to, like, would it help for them to learn complex techniques to outperform others? Is there something that they should be specifically focusing on when they're tackling such a track that has a lot of corners, has a lot of chicanes? Any advice that you'd like to provide in that area?
Oh yes. There are two aspects to it. One is on the technical side and one is on the driving side. Now, on the technical aspects, you need to think of a car behavior when you're talking about a car accelerating only up to 80 or even 100 on a tight circuit, on a small circuit. I can imagine they're going to be really tight corners also. So I think giving setup preferences and giving importance to a free roll to a car is very important, while at the same time entering the corner in a very conservative way and exiting the corner much quicker is on the driver end. So I will say all this can come into play only if there's a proper study done there on a layout and on simulators. Again, coming back to simulators. So I think this is where we can explore a lot of ideas, because back then, I think 10 years ago, I'm sure mechanical students or automotive students really didn't have the privilege to get data just by sitting at home. Today, I could sit down and design a layout, and I can get a proper setup of a car sitting at home in a computer. So I think, those are the two aspects. One is driving and one is on a technical side. It's all about getting out of the corner much quicker than others. Rest of it, I think, will fall in place.
Right. Um, that makes sense. There's two other questions right here. One question is actually from me. There is You're passionate about what you do. How did you graduate from just from a racing driver to a business owner as well? Because right now you run Quest Racing, if I'm not mistaken.
Quest Motorsports.
Quest
That's right.
Motorsports. Apologies. So, there's a difference by being in it and then by also running it. Is there any learnings that one or two important learnings that you've taken from it or from your experiences doing that?
Uh, it's literally from north to south pole. So, first of all, when people ask me, "Do you enjoy being a team owner?" I said, "Absolutely not." Okay, and when people ask me, "What are your plans onto your team?" I said, as soon as possible, close my workshop and go to sleep, because that's the most stressful part of it. Because being a race driver, life is more easier when you know that your car is going to be ready and your mechanics are waiting out there with a car loaded with fuel and just waiting. I'm sorry on that.
No problem.
So when you know that you have a team and a crew is waiting out there with a car for you to drive. Life was so simple out there, and you finish and you come back home for a hot plate of biryani at home and have a nice sleep. But life wasn't the same after I was rather compelled to start a racing team by my own friend. In fact, she's the one calling me on the other end, checking if I made order for the new dampers for the cars.
Right.
Yeah. So now the things are different when you have to worry about 10 odd drivers driving in your team, and you need to prepare a car for them and making sure their cars are filled with fuel and ensuring that there's no loose bolts or screws in the car and the FRP panels are not flying off. So it's not easy building a car,
Yeah, I can.
Sometimes much more easy driving it. But at the same time, I like the whole part of being a team owner, because I get to explore and try out different ideas on the cars, on the machines, which I could never do in the past.
Right.
So when I said I wanted to change my camber in the rear to, let's say, negative of 2.8, was they would ask me to shut up back then when I was a driver. But now when you're a team owner, I can do it to 3, even collapse my car, or even go for a 2.0 negative.
Right.
It's up to me. It's all about. I was an audio engineer. I was nowhere an automotive person, but I'll say my passion let me learn it.
Right.
You could sit down and build an engine sitting in a workshop now, which was not possible in the past.
Yeah, for sure.
And I will say learning is unlimited. It's an ocean. You can just keep pouring it into your bucket, and the ocean never keeps going dry. You have so much to learn. And I think my passion towards learning the technical aspects of a car got more, I would say, intense when I started a team. And the reason behind starting a team was one of my rivals. He was a 2-time champion. We have fought head-on for titles in the national championships. When we found that many opportunities were lacking, that we never got access to those opportunities. Was it because of the politics involved, or could it be because of the sponsors you never had, or the faster cars you could never win on? But we decided that there has to be a platform where drivers as well as mechanical talents can actually grow. So we needed a platform where people can rely on and learn and grow up the ladder. So that's when Quest Motorsports came into the picture. Well, it was quite a big business to be investing in, but I stopped looking at it as a business, but rather I would say a platform where all friends came together to grow. So, well, I founded Quest Motorsports, but then came in a lot of friends from different areas who took up responsibilities and were able to conduct events like the MRF Saloon Series, where we have 15 plus saloon cars racing there. This is the first level of racing for anyone who wants to enter motorsports. And then we have the Formula LGB 1300s running in the MRF National Racing Championship, as well as the JK Novice Cup.
Correct. Yeah.
And we are looking out for more and more championships to be introducing, so that we give opportunities to a lot of out there to come and showcase the talents.
Yeah.
So I don't regret the decision now.
I like the point that you make, that you got it's now a whole bunch of friends who are also involved in taking this forward. It just shows how close the community is in this in motorsports. And then the last question, before we end today, I really appreciate your time so far with all for answering your questions so well. What is your final tip, or like a message that you'd like to give to new drivers who plan on taking it professionally?
Oh yes, motorsports is not something you can just do a try, or there's not some trial and error platform. You either make it or you run away. So if you're here to make it, you don't give up. It could take a week, a month, a year, a decade, or 20 years. But ultimately, the one who's really confident and who's ready to overcome anything which comes by their way and go for the win are the ones who are going to survive in the sport. So let it be as a driver or even an engineer or a mechanic. It's all about taking it up and not giving up on the way. And you might feel yourself you might feel that you might be having a lot of disadvantages, but it's still up to you to make those disadvantages as an advantage. Like how I did with my physical conditions. Yes, I don't have both my legs, I don't have flesh, I don't have bones, but I wear feet which is made of carbon fiber. So technically, I have much lighter feet than all of you. So I can move my feet much faster. So that's how I overcame and found a different way to do things. So I'll say that has to be implied into every part of life, in various things, let it be a sport or life. So if you're taking it up, or if you're taking up the sport, come in to succeed, not to give up.
That was really good. That was really good. Thank you so much, Chetan. So to everyone here, thank you for joining in this evening. To Mr. Chetan Korada, we really appreciate it. It's been such an inspiration listening to your journey, and even and to see your humble roots and how you have been able to look at the use the challenges to your benefit, as you mentioned in the final part, being lighter, and how that has been an advantage on track3. But thank you so much for your time, to our review, to our audience both on YouTube and on Zoom. Thank you for your questions, and please do subscribe to our channel. You all have a wonderful evening, and Mr. Chetan Korada, to you as well, have a wonderful evening, and we hope to see you at a Formula Bharat competition in the near future, if you have time. Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy, for all the time and the lovely questions you have asked me. I think I got an opportunity to answer them all and educate them all. And thank you, Jayesh, for bringing me in for this forum. And I must say, it was a lovely opportunity, and I would love to be part of your program soon once again.
Yes, for sure.
Whenever is needed. And of course, with whoever is listening to me today, you can always log into our website, which is www.questmotorsports.in, and you can also follow our pages on Instagram, and which I'm trying to learn and keep updating so that you guys can know what I'm doing and what our team is doing. And you can also get more details on our academy programs, so you can come and at least get your first time experience in the sport, and maybe you can become a hero one day out here.
That sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. Thank you. And you have